So one trap that I fell into as an intermediate lifter, and I know many, many people have, is described really well by what is called Goodhart's law. And this states when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to remain a good measure. In other words, if you are focused on optimizing for any one metric, suddenly things are not optimal anymore. Trusty AI overview from Google gives me a good example here. It's called the Cobra effect. A classic example is offering a bounty for dead cobras in India. People started breeding cobras to kill them to turn in, which actually increased the cobra population rather than decreasing it. For me personally, the main trap that I fell into was volume. Back in 2017, 2018, 2019, volume was the new kid on the block. There were a bunch of studies coming out saying, hey, volume is the main driver of hypertrophy. The more volume you do, the more you grow. Look, it's basically linear, not even diminishing returns, just you do more, you get more. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do more. And I did more. However, it ignores a lot of other variables. And that gets to the heart of Goodhart's law, where you're hyper-focused on one variable of a multivariate equation. And hypertrophy is a multivariate equation, but it's very difficult to market a multivariable system because that requires nuance and context and a little bit of complexity that a lot of people just are not willing or capable of engaging with. And so it's much easier to say, hey, no, it's just volume. It's just proximity to failure. Like everyone else is wrong. This is what you have to do to get big. Like these are the only exercises. This is the system. And that is bullshit, but it sells really, really well. And so when you try to optimize for volume, you invariably ignore the other factors. So you don't train as hard. Your technique is going to get disrupted, or you'll just kind of slack off. You're going to lose focus because you're doing so much just to check off that box in your spreadsheet that each set suddenly becomes less productive. Now, some people need more volume, some people need less volume, but if you are just ignoring everything else, you're going to run into issues. Another one I've seen is lean is law, where the leaner you are, the better. And to a certain extent, I agree. In the short term, if someone wants to look their best, if you want to have the most impressive transformation to slap on a website, just get lean. Take whatever muscle mass you have and just get as lean as possible, as quickly as possible, so you can say, oh, here's a 5-week transformation. Doesn't matter what happens afterwards. Trouble is, that can absolutely get in the way of building your physique in the long term. And so, yeah, in the short term, yeah, this is the best way to go, but it's ignoring other variables which are absolutely important for looking your best or feeling your best or how sustainable that process is. Another one is if you want to optimize for arm size, just eat. Just get fat as shit and you're going to have eventually the arm measurement that you want. But you have to realize maybe that's not actually what you want. Maybe you want a certain look, not just a certain measurement on the measuring tape. And so, yeah, you can bulk up where almost anyone can get an 18, 19, 20-inch arm if they get fat enough. I mean, there are people who don't even lift weights who have 20-inch arms, but that's not really our goal, is it? Another one I've seen, not so much super recently, but back in the day, sort of along with the volume thing, was high frequency. It's the idea that, oh, muscle protein synthesis, it only spikes for 24 hours or 48 hours after a workout. So therefore, you're going to need to train super frequently so you can keep it elevated. But the reality is that's not necessarily always going to result in more growth. Sometimes hitting it harder and then allowing more time to recover could be the way to go. And so if someone is lifting and if you're hitting your hamstrings 4 times a week, I almost question if any one particular session is even doing anything. Are you going into the gym and really attacking the sets and pushing them really hard? Do you have good technique? Are you really causing a kind of stimulus and then there's disruption to go along with that? Or are you kind of just like, yep, that's my 4th hamstring session this week, definitely growing. But are you? By the way, this video is sponsored by Boostcamp. So Boostcamp is the best way to track your training, which can absolutely be overdone. But I think most people on average underdo the tracking thing where they're just not really tracking as much information as they actually need to assess if they're actually making progress to their goals. Plus, you get access to a ton of programs, most of which are free. I have a bunch of up there. You can check them out. So if you're not really sure what to do, hop on a fixed plan, something that is time-tested and battle-tested, and get those gains. So thank you to Boostcamp for sponsoring this video. Another super common one is effort or proximity to failure. So the only thing that matters is effort. Okay, well, no, there's a lot of other stuff. If you have high effort, but absolutely awful technique, you're still not going to grow because the attention is not really going where you want it to go. On the other hand, what about super strict technique? You see some people optimizing for just how slowly and cleanly they can move, and that's fine, but it's taking away from other variables. It's just, I can tell, it's just not a very hard set. They're not putting a lot of effort into it, and so they're essentially ego lifting, except their ego is attached to it using a certain style or a certain technique. And if I can tell who you follow based on your technique, you're probably not actually thinking independently or critically. You're just sort of following along. So someone might say in their marketing, oh, you have to go beyond failure to grow muscle. No, you don't. There are tons of people who built tons of muscle. Well, not literally tons of muscle. You're just a 2,000-pound block of muscle. Optimal. But there are definitely people, both natural and enhanced, who never failed. They didn't fail on anything. They didn't ever really train to failure. Often they got pretty close, but they never failed. And yet they still got really, really good results. And so if someone says something in a really absolutist manner when it comes to hypertrophy, it can usually be debunked, and often pretty easily, but they don't care because they're usually saying it because they want to sound confident and they want people to buy whatever shit they're putting out and they want to make a lot of money, and they're not actually interested in helping you. They're interested in lining their pockets. I mean, this even goes for something as basic as progressive overload. You might think, oh, at least progressive overload, like that's always a good thing, right? No, not necessarily. I mean, lots of people add weight to the bar and they're either getting sloppier and sloppier, and I've talked about this pretty recently, or they're bench pressing and suddenly they're turning into more of a power lifter where everything is optimized for moving the most amount of weight. And yet maybe they're not actually growing. And it's possible to get stronger on paper and not grow a single gram of muscle. It's even possible, try this on for size, to lose muscle while getting stronger. That is a thing. Not super common, and they're usually going to correlate. But if you are hyper optimizing for any one variable, it's possible to get much better at that, but ignore everything else and not only not see the growth you're looking for, but to shrink. It's like if a country focuses on only GDP, to the exclusion of everything else, sure, maybe at the beginning, GDP and quality of life for most people is going to increase, but at a certain point, you're going to just be pushing GDP up on paper, but it's not actually going to be producing any kind of benefit to most people. Just a random example, not naming any names here.
I'm in danger.
And a lot of this applies to diet as well. I can't tell you how many times I've coached someone and under the diet section, it just says if it fits your macros. I'm like, okay, well, but what are you eating? Okay, what foods? That's still relevant. That still matters, right? You can't just spit out, oh yeah, I eat 120 grams of protein a day or 180 grams of protein a day, and that's all. Like, you just send me some numbers. No, like food is more than numbers. The numbers matter, but it's not just that. Like, that's just not the end of the conversation. What you actually eat matters. What you actually do in the gym matters. It's not just did you add weight to the bar or not. It's how it felt. Are you motivated to do it? Is it going to be sustainable in the long term? Someone says, oh, I do flexible dieting, but then they freak out if they're not within 5 grams of all their numbers, right? Which is actually pretty hard to do. Someone says, oh yeah, like progressive overload, but if they can't add weight to the bar on one session, they lose their shit. So how flexible is your system if it's controlling you rather than the other way around? And the numbers will always matter, and you're probably not going to find a high-level lifter who doesn't know their numbers. Like, oh, what do you typically use on incline dumbbell bench press? And they just like, I don't know, maybe like 50 pounds, 150 pounds, somewhere in there. I just kind of go by feel. No, completely intuitive training is not the way to go, but you still have to realize that training and dieting and all this stuff, it's more than just numbers. And so you have to keep everything in context, and that can be really, really hard to do for a lot of people. And you can tell me any number associated with diet or training or anything in between, and I can tell you how people have fucked it up from chasing that number. And anytime someone is trying to sell you a simple system, realize that it's probably more complicated than they are letting on, and you're being marketed to. Anyway, if you want to check out my books, I will leave a link in a pinned comment. They're not simple. It doesn't spoon feed you everything. You're still going to have to put in the work, but they put everything in context and lay everything out that actually matters, which is more than just do this or just this one thing. So I hope you liked the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.